You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Overall, editors of the Batuta Advocate on Desert Rock FM. Welcome back to the Batuta Advocate radio show. Lockdown continues down south. We've got Sydney, they're going on 10 weeks now. Whew, that's a big whack. Victoria as well, despite the hardest lockdown and all of this, it's creeping out of the homes and workplaces down there quicker than it did in New South Wales. And we've just found a truck driver's been driving around Queensland with it. So, you know. I
know. Look, if only back in the start of June, how it was just popping off in Bondi. I mean, all we had to do was cattle bolt everyone in Bondi, you know. Just line them up and put the bolt straight through their forehead, you know. And then just bulldoze them up in a heap and, you know.
Pretty tricky thing to do in this day and age, I guess. Executing the richest people.
But it's a serious disease. This, you know, it kills people, Clancy.
Yeah, I know. I guess from the moment they found out a bloke was walking through Bondi Junction, Westfield for 2 weeks, coughing on everything, they probably should have had a snap lockdown, but they didn't. And now we're transitioning from eliminating it to living with it. And the show goes on. Vaccine rates are looking good. And I guess everyone's just trying to get on with life in whatever way they can. We are lucky enough here, we're not affected by the virus in the Diamantina Shire. And we're actually benefiting from it because it means a lot of the people that we might want to interview, whether they be down south, Melbourne, Victoria, are actually, they've got a lot of time on their hands. They can talk to us. So today we've had a big coup. It's a big win, a big scalp in the shape of Brendan Cowell. We've been wanting to get him on here for a while. And there's fuck all happening in Cronulla right now. So we're very, very lucky. Thank you for joining us.
Mate, absolute pleasure. Well, there's one thing you can do in the Sutherland Shire, and that's not let stuff in.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We're very good at protecting ourselves from things that we don't like, you know. Yep. I'm down here just in Northies at the moment and feeling very safe.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't have a riot to stop the virus coming into Cronulla this time around, but I guess that kind of goes.
No, I think the place has been gentrified, you know, since back in those days.
What do you reckon?
Man, it
reckon?
Really is. It's because all the footy players live down there now. Mm-hmm. It's harder to find a flat in Cronulla than it is in Sydney now.
Yeah, right.
I don't head down there since my nan passed away a few years ago. I don't head down there as much.
Yeah.
And now that the Sharks are playing at Net Strata Jubilee.
Yeah.
Well, now they're playing in southeast Queensland, aren't they?
Yeah,
they are.
But I don't
Dolphin Stadium, baby.
That's right. Isn't it great seeing these old school rugby league grounds filled up?
Redcliffe Dolphins has more members than the Bronx. Can you believe that?
Really?
Yeah. That also means there's a lot of elderly people that play pokies in that part of Brisbane. But
no, genuinely, thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan. I've been into you guys since the start and have just, I've gone overseas for 5 years and come back, and lovely watching your brand grow. And connecting with Hello Sport. It's one of my favourite podcasts, and
you're a punter and dribbler. We discovered that early on. You were calling in on the hotline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're here to kind of discuss today. You've written a book basically about being a punter and a dribbler, a man. I've admittedly haven't finished it, but you did send us a copy.
Yeah.
And my favourite, I hit the ground running with it. It starts with a bunch of blokes getting on the piss at the Casbah.
Yeah.
Which is the Carring Bar Hotel, am I correct, or tavern?
Yeah, it's just another name for the Carring Bar Inn.
It's a pub with a car park.
It's a pub with a car park, and I had a few of my quintessential events in that car park,
right. Yeah.
Because De La Salle Carring Bar and Our Lady of Fatima Primary are behind the Carring Bar Inn.
Right.
So as you graduate from primary school to high school, you then graduate to the Casbah. And that's kind of, and it was the Topless Tuesdays for a while, and also
it's a huge venue.
It had Rat Cat.
Yeah, right.
Play and in excess play.
Yeah, okay.
Regularly. Back in those days in 1991, where Noiseworks is playing.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
During the pub rock.
Yeah, that
days,
incredible pub rock time. But then, you see a lot of guys. And my book's called Plum, and it's about a bloke who's 48, 49 years old. And he kind of, after work every day just heads there, and he's got his four boys. Their WhatsApp group's called the Coxless Four.
Yep.
And one's an ex-Sydney Kings player, ex-jockey, another ex-footy player from Queensland, and they'll kind of tip in 4 to 14 schooners of an afternoon and just bet on whatever's moving.
And you know those four
A
blokes
Sydney
are sitting.
Kings player and a jockey.
Yeah, there's a height issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the jockey's called Squeaky, and for obvious reasons, his high pitched voice, and the ex Kings player is called Magic Matt, and he's waiting for his second hip operation, and they like going to Thailand a couple for an inverted commas golf trip.
Yeah.
A couple of times a year, and they're planning.
They'd be suffering. They'd be suffering in coronavirus. Those boys, wouldn't they? Basically. The Casbah's as close as you can get to Phuket.
Absolutely. I'd say they probably have a tiki-themed smoking section, which is, they often have that fake grass style smoking section. But these guys, absolutely transferable to any suburb and any town.
Yeah.
And the loyalty within them's really strong. And some of them, like Squeaky thinks this is the peak age, that late 40s. The pressure's off a bit, but you're not heaps old yet.
Yeah.
You can still hit the piss pretty hard and the rest a little bit, and nobody's watching, and mates are mates, and we've got each other because the kids are teenagers and stuff. And he's like, this is it.
You see those blokes at the pub. Some of them have made a bit of coin, some haven't, but it's always surf and turf. They're going to make a day of it. That's for sure.
Absolutely. I remember when I did on Surf and Turf, I did a movie called Beneath Hill 60, a World War One movie about the miners
where you
that
go
run
underneath the
ground.
ground.
And we were there's a lot of surf and turf in Townsville.
Yes.
And so one night, in the trenches, all the actors, we
Yeah.
were like, let's come up with different names for surf and turf. And this game just infiltrated the entire crew, and you just saw a whole bunch of actors / soldiers covered in blood and mud at 4 o'clock in the morning going, Ocean and Motion.
Lawn and prawn.
Lawn and prawn. Someone would just and then a boom swing and yell out, water and slaughter. And the game went on, for years to come. But really, so I've been working on the book for 2 years. I wrote it in lockdown in London last year.
Yeah, right.
As a way of kind of surviving. I wrote from 8 to 6 every day, and concussion was just starting to be an issue. Like, you're reading about rugby union players, Boyd Cordner's issues. It was early days.
Yeah.
And that movie with Will Smith.
With Will Smith.
Concussion.
Called Concussion, exactly.
Yeah.
That is a terribly made film, but the issue inside it was kind of,
It is.
kind of before its time. And you see how NFL has just kind of covered it over and go, we don't really care. This is the heartbeat of the nation. Shut up.
The Onion covered that very well. They did a story about I can't remember. Maybe it was when the Seahawks won the ring, and
the
they had
Super Bowl.
the confetti came down with shredded concussion reports on the Super Bowl.
So rugby league somewhere in that mix. And so I was also at that point in my life, like I've been shooting Avatar for a couple of years. I'd had some success in London, and I had a bit of money, and I was like, I'm a writer, but why do I write? And if I'm going to write, I want to write not for money. I want to write, what's the point of writing again? And I remembered I started off reciting poetry in pubs, in Glebe and at uni. And so I thought, I want to write about poetry. And the concussion issue was around. And then I thought, who's the last bloke to get into poems and to find a passion for language? And I thought, kind of a Gavin Miller, Greg Bird, kind of Paul Gallen, ex-footy player.
Ian Matthew.
Yeah, that kind of... thinking thug who suddenly needs it. And so this great juxtaposition happened plot-wise where you've got this guy, the corridors of his brain are open, and suddenly a few poets start appearing to him, and he stumbles upon a poetry night at a pub, and it kind of helps turn his life around and work on his relationships.
Okay, it's funny, you do see those blokes, if you've ever worked in labouring, landscaping on the council, there's always one or two blokes who... Everything else, they tick every other checkpoint of, they're rough as guts. They make those kind of comments, this and that. And then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, no, that was actually...
like we're talking about the
Bukowski,
Johns.
they know that shit.
Yeah.
Talking about the Johns brothers, they're always in between two books, and they've been ever, and they're curious. And it's a lot of footy players are quite curious guys. They just happen at the age of 4. They were the best at school. And they've been the best at school for the last 28 years because they've just kept being the best at school. But it hasn't stopped their curiosity, and so that's where he's kind of placed. But Peter the Plum Lum's kind of ambling along in life. He's pretty much happy with, being in the shadows and not being noticed. And he's got his girlfriend. His son's going to play, which is kind of the major plot line as he starts to see the carnage of the sport and goes, do I support Gavin? And then his son sees his dad falling apart going, do I do that?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
maybe I do UFC.
Yeah.
Because then at least if I get concussed in UFC, I saw it coming and I knew what I was up for.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? And so that kind of all starts to dance around his head, as well as maybe I'll die.
Yeah, it's,
You know?
it's a funny kind of thing down there in Cronulla. I mean, as you said, those characters are transferable to every tavern. I wouldn't say every
Yeah.
pub, but you know,
Every tavern.
tavern.
Wouldn't be too many people like him in, you know, bloody Ultimo or
No.
Wallara.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I mean,
where
Annandale.
they're those pubs that, you know, they had this most authentic kind of aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they did them up. And now they've spent $1 million getting it back to that look.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's occasionally. I know the big one up in Brisbane, up near on Caxton Street, was the Paddo Tavern, the Paddo Hotel, and they stripped all of these beautiful saddle seats off the
Yeah.
bar, got rid of them,
Yeah.
made it sterile,
Yeah.
and now they're trying to be like, you know, actually, let's go back to
Yeah,
that.
let's go back to that rough,
Yeah,
ready
it's
off.
like-
Yeah, like the
What's the name
sawdust
of
in
that
the
pub on
beer garden.
on Oxford Street in Balimba?
The Balmoral,
Balmoral, yeah.
the Oxford 152. It's called
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
It's now. Its name is now
That
the
used
address.
to be a
It
beautiful
used to-
old pub.
It used
Now
to be
it's-
called the Balmongrel Hotel. Balmoral. These are all the pubs in Brisbane, because Brisbane actually is a tavern city. So I'm imagining your book will
Yeah.
translate there, because Woolworths had this thing back in the day where every corner pub, if you owned a pub, you could turn it into a bottle shop, and that demolished all the locals in Brisbane. So now it's basically, if you want to go to the pub, you got to drink drive in Brisbane, which is sounds a lot like Cronulla. You don't have the corner pubs down there, do you? It's
No, it's
No.
big venues. I think we
Yeah.
also have a postcode. I think we've got 2042, 2024, is it? 2024. God, I haven't lived there in such a long time.
isn't it tatted on your neck, mate? or-
2042. No, that's the Southern Cross, mate. No, we've got those big venues, those
Yeah.
big venue pubs, and that's where the trouble starts.
Yeah.
Because you get, you know, I remember from year 10,
Yeah.
you know, we had the Bombers
Yeah.
and the Surfies.
Yep.
And I was at that time, because I went through a phase every 3 weeks,
Yeah.
so I was just swapping over. But at that time, I was.
Jeans were changing shape each
That's
week.
right. That's right. I was in the MC Hammer pants, and then I was a goth. But at this time, I was a raver. I was just connecting at 16 with, you know, dragging mum's car out when she was asleep and going into weird warehouse hangars near the airport and dancing in the green light till 6, and then driving mum's car home via 7-Eleven, filling it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the Bombers wore bomber jackets with a rap quote on the back, and they graffitied.
Yeah.
And then there was the long-haired blonde servers, and they had a big fight out the front of, and the thing was, it was the big venues, because everybody gathers into a group, and they're that group. They stare at each other,
And then a schooner flies across the room.
well, the girl comes through who was dating him, but is now dating Mario. Was dating Mario, is now dating Glenn.
Yeah.
And suddenly there's a thing that happens. There's enough schooners and whatever, and bang, it's on.
Yeah.
But you don't get that in a little Melbourne wine bar,
No,
because
that's-
everybody's squashed together.
You don't get it in the London kind of idea, or the Irish idea of a pub, which is actually very much a public house and a community.
That's right.
When-
Shared bench.
You're at
Yeah.
the fucking Westfield with schooners. That's where.
That's
you're-
exactly right. It is an auditorium for war. It's set
And
up
the goal
that way.
is, it's just you're going here for one reason, and that's to get alcohol poisoning.
Yeah,
Where, you know, at
exactly.
least
or
like
play the machines.
in other cultures, it's like I'm going to the pub because I'm hungry, or you know, I'm going
Yeah.
to meet a friend here. It's
to
just
meet
like,
Brett and tell him, you know, well done for his new job, or, you know,
Yeah.
his wife's pregnant or whatever. But instead you go here, the music's fucking cranked up. It's not even music. It's just this noise. It's like, you know what I mean? The light's
Yeah.
purple.
It's air
Everyone's on steroids, like the dudes. And you don't know if they're gay, straight, or, you know, supernatural.
Yeah, yeah.
And then a girl walks past and she's wearing what used to, I don't know if it's even called a skirt kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it's just on at about 10:15.
Yeah. And then it's like,
that's
no,
the pride of the South.
you can't get a glass schooner anymore. You know, it's past 8 o'clock, so now you've got to drink out of a plastic one, because also that's firmly entrenched in our culture is you fuck people up with a broken schooner glass for some reason. It's just no matter where you go in every state and territory, they just schooners turn into weapons.
They do. And it's that beautiful 1-2 of the old, just smash it on the glass, then shove
Yeah.
into the throat.
Yeah, where it becomes a knife.
Yeah.
There's one. There was a video of that bar fight down in Tassie. I think. Well, I can put it in the show notes, but the schooner glasses. It was like being in no man's land in like the First World War. They're just going pew 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 pew. Like there's people there, like they're getting pool balls, fucking schooner glasses.
My favourite thing about those YouTube pub fights is just there's no actual conformity either in Australian pubs where, I mean, a group of mates will be terrified of looking different to one another, but like those blokes who go to the pub by themselves, like one's got a long mop of dreads, the other one's sitting there, he looks like Squeaky the jockey, and you just got all these random walks of life who, you know, they come there for the same reason. And I find that, I mean, I'm talking about somewhere like the Casbah, which is obviously a cult, you know, I mean, I guess Northern Beaches of Sydney would have their own version, and they certainly do on the Goldie and the beach towns in Queensland. That place would pump on Christmas Eve. Is that the place? Yeah, that's
absolutely.
what you're thinking. Every single person you know's there.
Yeah. And everybody everybody mocks it and laughs at it, but they need it. You know, and I think every suburb has that place where it's the laughing stock, it's sad, but I'll see you there. You know, and
where'd you end up last night? Oh, the cat.
I'm going back this afternoon.
I left my coat there.
I woke up in the dunes at a fucking Wanda Beach.
Well, no, we used to. That's when I was doing my experimenting in the rave scene. One of my mates was a competitive four-wheel drive guy. So we go out to
out to
Cronulla,
to Boat Harbour and stuff,
you know, and experiment with certain things and get the go off the sides of the hills where they shot some Mad Max out there, and there's feral. There was rumours that there was feral people out there in their corrugated iron, and so I had a lot of wild experiences, and we'd get bogged, and you'd have to walk 6 hours, you know, back to Cronulla, and it was really kind of fortress stuff out. It was wild out there, you know.
So when did you leave Cronulla for the? It's not
CSU
peninsula
Mitchell.
down there. Yeah, so you went out to Bathurst. Was that your first?
Yeah.
Was that your first?
That was it. I was 18 years old, and I remember I was playing in a band in Cronulla and with a few older dudes, and I remember my mates being on the lawn at Caringbah as Mum and I and my sister drove to Bathurst.
Yeah, right.
And there was something about it because I auditioned for all the drama schools.
NIDA.
And I didn't get in.
Yeah.
And one of them, the NIDA one, she asked me to do my Shakespeare across a chasm, and I didn't know what a chasm was. I thought it was an acting word for go crazy, you know, but it actually is just a big hole in the earth, if anybody wanted to know. So I didn't get in, but I remember going out to Bathurst, and Bill Blakey was there, and I was walking around this kind of charming, weird old country town campus just thinking, I'm coming here. And there was something about being a storyteller the bloke talked about. He goes, you're not a tool in a toolkit here, you're the whole toolkit, and you can do whatever you want, radio, and there was something about that for my kind of
Did you do the whole whack out there? You did a full degree?
I did the full degree, So I left Cronulla there, and, you know, I'd only, you know, I was a Christian guy. I thought you voted Liberal. I hadn't run into too many gay people, you know, or anything. And then I suddenly, you know, the first time I worked on the library lawn, there was a guy in a midriff with Christianity sucks on his T-shirt. There was two ladies kissing and different cultures. I moved in with a gay bloke, and he started getting onto another bloke, and I had to go, am I homophobic? And I was like, they look like they're having a ball, you know? You know, and so I genuinely had to open myself up to what do I actually think instead of just thinking what you should think because I was from Cronulla. And what I love about my mates from Cronulla is they do think what they think because they don't care what anyone thinks of what they think. And that's lost as soon as you get over, you know, Captain Cook Bridge into the city where everybody, I mean, you guys know that being out in the country, but, you know, in the city, people think what they must think at the dinner party. And so I don't know, I Bathurst blew my mind, and I learned how to, you know, pay a bill, have sex, you know, cook a sausage, deal with people, grow up, you know, and also I made heaps of art out there.
The pubs in the Central West. If you ever need a lesson in de-escalation, that you should
you should walk through
those
the pubs in Bathurst. Like, what's that one on the hub? The fucking Dudley.
The park hotel or the Dudley.
The park on the corner, and
especially race week.
The
Knickerbocker too. That was pretty rough. The Eddie.
The Eddie,
on the fucking
the Ox.
The Ox. Yeah,
it's the Ox.
The Ox, I worked in that bottle shop actually for a while.
The Common Co.
That was good.
Race week in the Common Co would have been a bit of fun.
Well, doing the theatre media course, we performed at Race Week.
Right.
So we would take a performance piece into the pubs.
What, down to the
Oh, was that
And-
the flash dance type shit? What do they call
We
it?
had
to
we
the-
had this big
Elephant and Castle?
vehicle. No, we go to all the pubs.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but you call it, is it called mumming? Is that the thing?
Yeah, the mumming
Where they launch these fucking thespians on these fucking V8 fans. And
Yeah.
Tell us
It's
how
like
that
Survivor, really,
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's a real.
Yeah, no, we all had to come up with these mumming shows, and they're kind of live performance shows. And because the whole philosophy behind the theatre media course is there is no black box theatre. Everyone in the world is the audience. You inflict yourself on them, kind of commedia dell'arte circus style.
Yeah.
So I went into a pub as a reformed Mormon in tights. And Amy, the girl that was with me, she got up, she flashed her boobs. So the whole pub turned around. And then I went, hello and welcome. First of all, I would like to challenge anybody to scull a jug of beer quicker than I can. And so a guide came up. I'd scull the jug of beer quicker than him. And have I got your respect? And so we'd shown them boobs.
Yeah.
And then I had shown them I can drink a lot of beer fast. And then they would watch us.
Yeah, right.
And we would do a 20-minute show. By the end, Glenn and Brett and Phil and everyone's getting up on the bar doing
Really?
playing a character. Throw the hat around, get a grand,
Yeah.
walk out. We go back onto our vehicle, which was a percussive vehicle, where we were playing drums on the vehicle that was made of scaffolding and wheels. Go down the next pub.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know how he didn't get murdered. But when I came to Sydney, and I auditioned for STC and I got a speaking part in a play where I played a ghost who had 4 lines in Tony McNamara's play, The Recruit. And I was thinking, am I nervous about being Sydney Theatre Company? I went, I'm not nervous at all. I just did Race Week.
Yeah.
Like,
I went
Yeah.
into the Holden pub.
yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
there's people in their 70s who've paid $109 to be here
Yeah.
and sit down and applaud me. Like, I just went into a room full of maniacs in black jackets with tattoos on their forehead. Like, and I remember getting my tattoo in there and
Wearing tights.
wearing tights and playing a kind of a gay Mormon character. It's 1995, everybody. I remember going into Pete's tattoo studio at 3 a.m. one morning and a guy was getting Brocky Forever on his neck. And the next morning, Peter Brock, I think he bounced out in the time trial.
Yeah, right.
And I thought, imagine going home to the wife,
Yeah.
I got Brocky Forever on the neck. Oh, how'd he go? He didn't race. But yeah, they used to pick up, they picked up my Ford Laser and took the wheels off when I was at the roundabout. This kind of stuff.
The V8 fans.
The Holden guys would come out,
Yeah.
lift up, and me and my flatmate Evan, we were getting rosemary from the roundabout.
Yeah.
Because we were cooking a roast. Intramail had just been invented, so
Yeah.
we would go to the 2 computers. And I could type 100 words to Evan, and then he could say, "No, I'll do a bolognese. Should we invite the guys from theatre group?" And then I'd go, "Yeah, I'll invite." I'd go and check his message an hour later.
Yeah, right.
And we couldn't believe this thing, Intramail.
Intramail.
You could get a one-line message from someone.
In the labs.
Take you 45 minutes to get the MS-DOS,
Yeah.
And so, okay, that explains how would you say, a very quick...
Summary.
a very quick look at the world.
Yeah.
And then you started, you went from being obviously, someone who was thriving in Bathurst and then coming into Sydney and having a bit of fun within your peer group. Then you became a household name, you know what I mean? You start making the dramas on the, primetime television. What was that transition like? And did you find sometimes maybe, when you found kind of a high profile, was it Cronulla you were leaning into, or was it the fruity kind of life you lived in as a thespian in Bathurst?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think I got funny or got in my own skin till, somewhere in my mid-30s. So I feel like I think you get funny when you get into your own skin, is what I'm saying. And I think when I was 26 and Love My Way happened and I started a high-profile relationship, I fell in love with an actor and suddenly I had my own TV show and I was winning awards. I was going to these things called the Logies, all sorts of stuff was happening and it was quite overwhelming. It was everything I'd ever wanted.
Yeah.
But you're right, I was torn between one being an upstart playwright and saying Australia's got problems with masculinity and suicide and its history, and at the same time trying to be an affable Aussie and be liked whilst being an upstart. And I found that balance really hard to say, am I a true artist having a crack here about what lies beneath the surface of this utopian place?
Yeah.
Or am I being affable and trying to be loved
And a conformist, yeah.
and get a lead on a Channel 10 show and just be that guy?
Yeah.
And I think I did struggle with it,
Yeah.
you know, and went overseas to LA where they just looked at me and went, well, you're kind of not obscure enough to be a character actor, but you're not good looking enough to be a movie star. And so they just kind of went, you don't fit into anything, you know. And I always felt that a bit with how I look and what I'm like. And it wasn't until I just kept doing what I do that suddenly caught on, you know, and I started making my own work. And I fell into myself a bit after a long relationship, after facing some demons and stuff. Somewhere in my mid-30s, I went, I think this is him. You know.
So you're, you know, as you said before, working on Avatar.
Yeah.
You're looking healthy. You're looking jacked. Do you think you've grown into a? Into someone who could be in an American film? You know, you're saying when you first went to LA over there, they kind of didn't have a place for you. But do you reckon now you've kind of grown into the characters you can play?
Oh, look, fingers crossed. It's funny. The great Spud Carroll says, when a chick gives you a physical compliment, you don't believe him, but when a guy gives you a physical compliment, it means something. When you just said that, I was like, thanks, man. And it's true. When dudes say you're looking good, they don't want to have sex with you, and they usually don't want anything.
They usually don't want to say it.
And they also know that you're no longer eating corn chips and Magnums at 11 o'clock, and that's hard, or you're not sucking piss every night. So it's like,
mate. It's like, well, so what have you been doing? It's like, I haven't had a drink for 6 months. They're like, oh, why?
Yeah, exactly.
What have you been doing? Exercise.
What the hell did you do to stop drinking? Tell me about the last time you drank. It was like, so I crashed my dad's car.
Yeah, there's plenty of reasons.
I think that was the last time I saw you, you know, was after I just stopped, you know, when we were talking about doing something together, and I, you know, it was 2.5 years ago or something, and I did stop drinking, and it has been very different.
Yeah.
You know, now it's easy. Now it's the new normal.
Yeah.
Now I couldn't think of anything worse. Really.
Yeah.
But before then, I didn't know how to get through the next 3 weeks. So I had a wedding, I had a thing, I had a meeting. I'm like, I'm going to be pissed for 2.5 weeks for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see another way.
Would that bloat you?
That bloats you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I can see my cheekbones and my jaw and stuff at the moment, and my blue eye, my eyes are blue, and you know, I was kind of saggy
white
and
stuff around the blue too.
Yeah, it's not yellow.
I feel like it's that 3D photo in the newspaper where the seahorse suddenly emerges. You know, it's like I have the 3D image of Brendan Cowell suddenly emerged, and it's confronting, you know, because every time something happens, you can have a beer, and you know, and it takes everything away. And now you've got to deal with life on its terms. It's like, but exercise becomes something for the mental health, and I find it a lot more radical experience. I got to say, not drinking, it's absolutely bonkers. You know what I mean. Whereas drinking for me became repetitive. I thought I was doing something radical, but I wasn't. I was doing the same thing over and over again.
Do actors fall into that kind of? They want to kind of be the twisted drinker as well. They wanted to be the.
I think so, and that's probably one of the things. Like talking about, did I lean into Cronulla or whatever? I think I totally, you know. And when I wrote Reuben Guthrie, which was such a hit of a play, I think I was him. You know, and I had a house in Newtown, and I was having parties, and you could pretty much knock on my door at 2 a.m. whenever, and there was 10 people in there, artists, singers, you know, and people staying in my house, and I would tell the stories of my self-destruction, and that was, you know, I was kind of a caricature of myself, but at the same time I was like, I'm not sure I'm enjoying this, and, you know, and
everyone's around going, man, he goes so hard, how does he do it? He's like, he's explaining. It's
and I think, you know, I think it's a common thing in your 20s and 30s. I still see a lot of men and women do it, is that they are a character in their own show. You know what I mean? And then somehow in your 30s you go, suddenly the show's less comedy, more tragedy now. And that's where I got to. But yeah, I feel like, you know, it was I got Avatar from doing a play in London, and that's what I was most proud of. I played Galileo. Joe Wright directed me, and the casting director saw that and then flew me to LA. And I was halfway through the audition. The audition went for 3 days because that's how Jim likes to roll, and it was the full live action, and the crew were down there, and and he wanted it so big and so intense, and I couldn't get there.
Yeah.
And then I went out of the room and I thought, I'm losing this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm about to lose this huge opportunity. And I think it was that was keeping me from it. But then I got a text, my nan died.
Yeah, right.
And I went, I'm going to go back to Sydney after this audition to a funeral. And then I walked back in and I just looked at James Cameron and I looked at everyone and went, I don't care. You know, because my nan just died.
Yeah.
And it was full Eminem mic drop weird, like, okay.
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah.
All right, what's this? And I just went bang.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
then suddenly Cameron turned around and went, I think the captain's in the room.
Yeah,
I think
right.
the captain's in the room.
Okay.
And he's like, I wrote him as 60 in Scottish, but I think he's 40 in Australian. And I was like, I think he's 40 in Australian. Watch this. And the thing that I realised with Jim was that you just had to play.
Yeah.
He's a director. He's a kid. He loves actors. I think he loves actors because it's the one department he can't do.
Yeah.
Because he can do anything else,
Yeah.
you know.
And has won awards for it. Yeah.
Like he can do anything on the film set, kind of better than everybody.
Yeah, right.
With the actors, he looks and he goes, "Yeah, that was good," and almost through gritted teeth, like, "How'd you do that?" And it's like, I don't know. I'm just acting, you know. And so I don't know. I've never wanted to hide out in LA. But if it inhaled me, I'd go for it. But
Yeah.
I'm definitely not going to go up and put my hand up.
So
there.
how long is that Avatar, obviously the next Avatar, how long has that been in production for? That's been...
Well,
you've
it was
had
for
that-
5 years before I went on, and I've been on the last 2.5 years. I'm in the next 2 films.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So one comes out December 22, and then the next one December 24. I've got a bit to do on the 3rd film still.
Right.
Yeah.
And they said, "Are you available early 2023?" And I said, "It's looking like it."
I'll make myself available.
Yeah, I think February's good. You know.
And that concludes part 1 of the Brendan Cowell podcast. His new book, Plum, should be available to pre-order online now. Tune in next week on the Batuta Advocate Radio Show and listen to part 2, where we spend a little bit more time breaking down the masculinity of aging middle-aged men in the Cronulla Shire, namely our Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and how these men all relate to the Cronulla Sharks. Brendan also gives us the rundown on what he did in 2017, 1 October in 2017, when the Cronulla Sharks finally won the NRL Premiership. All that and more next week with Brendan Cowell. Thank you for tuning in.